Hello there and welcome. You're watching All 24 News live from Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Fazakari, and these are today's top stories. Brazil's security forces regained control after Bolsonaro supporters stormed Congress, stirring international condemnation. Also coming up, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for massive support to help Pakistan with a $16 billion rebuilding effort following devastating floods. And nearly 90% of Henan, China's third most populous province, has contracted COVID as the country battles an unprecedented COVID surge. Also in our news, hundreds of activists have gathered in the village of Lützerath in Germany to delay its demolition for a coal mine. Hello again and welcome to the program. Fast in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune chaired on Sunday a cabinet meeting devoted to discussing a bill related to preventing and combating human trafficking. Joint ministerial presentations dealing with the mechanism of supplying the national market with urea, preparations for the month of Ramadan for the year 2023, and desalination of seawater. In the same context, Algeria aims to raise the capacity of water production through desalination to 3.5 million cubic meters per day next year, as part of a strategic plan to confront water scarcity and the specter of drought. Here's Zahra Farjani with the report.
President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, ordered on Sunday during the cabinet meeting he chaired to develop a plan for the expansion of seawater desalination plants all along the coast to avoid the impact of the difficult climatic situation that the world is experiencing. To confront the drought dependence on dams and groundwater, Algeria has developed the seawater treatment with a national park that includes 14 stations that can desalinate more than 1.5 million cubic meters per day.
ولكن مع 4 سنوات 5 سنوات جفاف يعني أصبحت ما تفيدش المواطن في ماء الشرب. لأن حاجة اللي ممكن يعني البحر ما ينتهيش، يعني احنا كنا نفوتوا نهائيا في سياسة تحلية مياه البحر فيها أكثر ضمان بالنسبة لتزويد المواطن بالمياه العذبة بمياه صالحة للشرب بالأخص في المدن الكبرى.
Algeria hopes to raise the number of desalination plants to 19 facilities by adding 5 giant plants with treatment capacities exceeding 300,000 cubic meters per day for each of them, which allows raising the national capacity in desalinated water to 3,300,000 cubic meters per day around 2024.
أعتقد بانتهاء المشروع هذا ال5 مشاريع نتاع 300,000 متر مكعب لكل مشروع، شرق غرب وسط، نصل إن شاء الله إلى إنتاج ما يفوق 3,300,000 متر مكعب سنويا في الجزائر. وما أعتقدش أن فيه يعني دولة اللي فيها هذا الإنتاج تاع مياه صالحة للشرب من خلال تحلية مياه البحر.
This huge investment would raise desalinated water coverage of the country's needs from 23% at the present time to 60% around 2023, in the forefront of Africa in terms of water facilities.
President of the Algerian Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, congratulated on Monday the startup Farm AI, which ranked second globally out of 12,000 participants in a competition organized in China. President Tebboune, in a tweet, expressed his pride in the achievement of the Algerian youth and included it among the gains of the new Algeria, wishing them more success. To Palestine now. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation will hold an extraordinary open-ended meeting of its executive committee in Jeddah to discuss the Zionist aggression escalation on the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque. This comes after escalating Zionist activity in occupied Al-Quds, most notably a provocative visit by Zionist far-right National Security Minister to the mosque compound. It also comes in light of Zionist attempts to alter the legal and historical status of the holy site. 2 Palestinians were injured while another 10 were arrested on Monday in confrontations while occupying forces in the town of Aqaba, north of Tuba. According to Palestinian medical sources, a young man was inflicted injuries while the occupying forces detained another Palestinian in the Jalma barrier for a number of hours before releasing him into the care of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. In the same context, Zionist occupation forces arrested 12 Palestinians last night in several parts of the West Bank on the grounds that they were wanted by Zionist security agencies. The UN Security Council on Monday unanimously approved the delivery of humanitarian aid to some 4 million people in northwestern Syria for another 6 months, avoiding a traditional fight with Russia over the issue. Authorization by the 15-member council is needed because Syrian authorities did not agree to the humanitarian operation.
The Secretary General takes note of today's decision by the Council to confirm the extension of its authorization of the UN cross-border humanitarian operation, which remains an indispensable lifeline for 4.1 million people in northwest Syria. The decision to confirm the extension of that authorization for an additional 6 months comes as humanitarian needs have reached the highest level since the start of the conflict in 2011, with people in Syria grappling with harsh winter and a cholera outbreak.
To Western Sahara now, the committee in charge of the process of preparing for the 16th Congress of the Polisario Front continue their work as the participants discussed on the second day of work the developments of the Sahrawi issue and the need to keep pace with the stage marked by the resumption of the armed struggle and the readiness it requires. The participants called for close ranks and support for the Sahrawi People's Liberation Army by all means and capabilities. Back to Algeria now. The Zwirat Tindouf Road project between Algeria and Mauritania is due to commence by the end of February, according to officials. The key importance of this project is to boost connectivity and international transport and trade for North and West Africa. More details with Salma Nasib.
The pace of works of the Zwirat Tindouf Road project are intensified for the aim of delivering the project in early February. Hence, Algerian authorities ordered to double the efforts to construct the border crossing road.
Delay is not allowed at all. The works must be done completely, coinciding with the date of this important border crossing. The state has allocated 34 million Algerian dinars for its completion. We have to complete the constructions in the next few weeks in order to receive it and put it into active service by the end of next February.
The 775 kilometers road project, which is of great importance to the economy of the two countries, enhances the infrastructure aimed at promoting exports and economic cooperation.
The vital project is of a great importance due to its regional and continental strategic nature, as it can play an international role in the near future. The works must comply with the international standards.
In addition to engaging in the Mauritanian and West African markets, Algeria aims at enhancing foreign trade and economic cooperation.
The border crossing is part of the embodiment of the endeavor to promote foreign trade and revitalize the border crossing spread across the national territory, with an increase in the flow of Algerian goods and the movement of people towards Mauritania in particular.
Algeria and Mauritania are both benefiting from the Zouér-Tindouf Road project, as this border crossing is considered a vital strategy for trade that plays an international role in the near future.
During a press conference on the sidelines of the launch of the preparatory forum for the National Reconciliation Conference, Deputy Presidential Counsel Abdullah Al-Lafi reviewed the importance of the National Reconciliation Project, which is led by the Presidential Council and supports the stability of Libya to lead it to elections. Al-Lafi added that the forum, in which all political parties met in order to reach an inclusive conference for national reconciliation, will have consensual legislative and executive decisions that contribute to the stability of Libya. The head of the Sudanese Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, affirmed that the armed forces will not have any role in the transitional process, noting that they are committed to leaving the political process and calling for the need to work for the various parties to join them. He also expressed his hope for the formation of a real civilian government that reflects the desires of the Sudanese people.
تحية لكم. نحن نؤكد مجدداً أن المؤسسة العسكرية
We confirm that the armed forces are committed entirely to leaving the political process and also committed to work with political and civil partners to put the basis which guides the work of the armed forces in democratic societies. We believe that the armed forces are part of the power of the country, which requires everybody to take part in its management, and sooner or later they will abide by the governance of the civil government.
In Africa still, gunmen with AK-47 rifles have attacked more than 30 people from a train station in Nigeria's southern Edo state. The attack is the latest example of the growing insecurity in the country. This led to the closure of the Nigerian Railway Cooperation until further notice. According to Edo State Information Commissioner Chris Osa Nikar, the kidnappers had taken 32 people. Only one had already escaped. Iranian and Pakistani military commanders made a phone call in order to establish a joint military working group, enhancing the good relations between the armed forces of the two countries, including the development of defense and security cooperation, especially on the common borders. And in a different development, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday called for massive support to help Pakistan with a $16 billion rebuilding effort following devastating floods, saying the country had been the victim of climate chaos and the global financial system. Here's Sofian Kinturi's report.
At Monday's conference, the UN raised money and other forms of assistance to help Pakistan deal with the effects of the devastating flooding that occurred last summer and left more than 1,700 people dead in its immediate aftermath. Officials from 40 countries, as well as private donors and international financial institutions, are gathering for a meeting in Geneva as Islamabad seeks support.
And I'm very grateful to Secretary General of the United Nations, to multilateral institutions like IMF, World Bank, and UNDP, AIIB, and friendly countries around the globe who came to our rescue and to support us.
Turkish and French presidents attended the conference virtually. President Macron pledged 10 billion euros additional aid support for this emergency call.
Pourtant, à ce jour, seuls 30%
France is meeting its responsibility with bringing a new contribution of 10 million euros for this urgent appeal.
Authorities in Pakistan hope that half of the funding will come from international community as soon as possible to end the suffering of millions of Pakistanis who are still living near contaminated and stagnant flood waters. Meanwhile, the Secretary General of United Nations, Antonio Guterres, expressed deep frustration at perceived inaction by global leaders on climate crisis.
And I am deeply frustrated that global leaders are not giving this life or death emergency the action and the investment it requires. Because words are not enough. Without action, climate catastrophe is coming for all of us.
The conference is a test case for how much the developed countries is willing to help countries like Pakistan cope with the effects of climate change and prepare for other disasters.
In Asia still, according to a top health official, nearly 90% of Henan, China's third most populous province, has contracted COVID as China battles an unprecedented COVID surge. As of January 6th, 89% of people in central Henan province were infected, according to Ken Quancheng, director of the Health Commission. Dozens of people gathered in long lines outside an immigration administrative office in Beijing on Monday, patiently waiting for their turn to submit passport applications to travel abroad after China dropped pandemic border controls and its zero-COVID policy that shielded its population from the virus outbreak for nearly 3 years.
Due to the industry that I'm in, there are certain links that needed to be made with the outside world, so I'll have to travel out more. We need to be kept aware of the global market in terms of communication of information. There are also some international conferences to attend.
Thailand's tour bus operators said on Monday that they are preparing for an expected influx of Chinese tourists, and work was underway to check vehicles and make sure they are disinfected and ready to go. Meanwhile, the first direct flight from China since the pandemic shut borders arrived in Thailand on Monday, a day after Beijing dropped COVID border controls that had largely prevented its 1.4 billion residents from traveling for 3 years.
We are very excited to come back to Thailand. We are waiting for 3 years already. Before the COVID, we come here every year. And this time I take my family to come here.
Because I think Thailand people is very nice, and it is also a very nice place. It has beaches, and it's different from China, where I come from.
In a different topical development, the Taiwanese Defense Ministry reported on Monday that 28 Chinese aircraft had flown into Taiwan's air defense zone over the previous 24 hours, after China claimed to have conducted additional drills nearby. Meanwhile, high-ranking members of the German parliament visited Taiwan, but Chinese Foreign Ministry criticized the move, saying or labeling it as provocative. Situation of the war in Ukraine is getting more and more tense. Russian forces continue their strikes on Ukrainian cities, mainly in the eastern part of the country. Kherson authorities have posted a new video of Kherson, which was targeted overnight, showing the damage left by the shelling. On the other side, Ukrainian soldiers confirmed that bad weather and temperature below freezing point has served them better track the Russian forces' movement in the region.
In the cold time of the year, when there is snow, masking is visible, as well as the roads and paths, which are used to supply provisions and ammunition. During nighttime, warm silhouettes are visible from thermal imagery and drones.
In a different story, UK is still witnessing a severe economic situation after the dialogue, which was meant to solve the continuous strikes taking part in the country, failed. Many unions have resumed strikes for pay rise as inflation skyrocketed. Here's Usama Ayati.
Britain will face more strikes by workers demanding higher pay after meetings between ministers and trade unions failed on Monday to end a wave of strikes across sectors from healthcare to transport. The GMB union revealed that more than 10,000 ambulance workers will walk out on Wednesday as planned. This comes after talks with Health Minister Steve Barclay failed to produce a breakthrough.
Unfortunately, the government have missed yet another opportunity to put this right. We came here in good faith. What they want to talk about is productivity. Productivity, when our members are working 18-hour shifts, quite how you become more productive with that.
UK service strikes were not limited to health workers. Tens of thousands of railway workers in the United Kingdom continued their strikes after the multi-day strike on rail, maritime and transport workers, disrupting rail traffic.
Our ambulance members will be taking strike action on the 23rd. So very disappointed today, but unfortunately not surprised.
On government level, however, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak stated that talks between ministers and trade unions were a positive development.
but recovering.
Well, I'm really pleased that union leaders accepted ministers' invitations to come in today to have discussions across the board, and that's a really positive development. And on pay, we've always said that the government is happy to talk about pay demands and pay issues that are anchored in what's reasonable, what's responsible, what's affordable for the country. But the most important thing is those talks are happening.
With pay rises failing to keep up with double-digit inflation, which is now around 40-year highs, nurses, ambulance staff and railway workers are among those who have staged walkouts, with teachers also being balloted over action. In recent months, the UK has suffered the worst wave of strikes since the 1980s, causing serious paralysis in a number of industries, including healthcare. After more than a decade of stagnant wage growth, inflation is soaring, leaving many people struggling to make ends meet, leading to continued strikes.
In Europe still, hundreds of activists have gathered in the village of Lutzeroth planned to delay its demolition for a coal mine for weeks. They say mining the fossil fuel is a betrayal of the Paris Agreement. Villagers were making plans on how best to save the village of Lutzeroth, the village that has become a center for climate protest in Germany, with activists saying the planned clearance of the village for mining goes against the country's pledges under the Paris Agreement. 3 emblematic places of power of Brazil were stormed by Bolsonarists. It took nearly 4 hours for poorly prepared law enforcement to evacuate them. These events seem to be the Brazilian copy of the Capitol invasion in Washington in January 2021, with international condemnation over the act of violence. Islam Sid reports.
Shattered windows, broken chairs and damaged furniture. This is the aftermath of what has been caused by supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro at the presidential palace and the Supreme Court of Brazil. Security forces and Bolsonaro supporters clashed in front of the National Congress building in the capital in protest against the new government. Meanwhile, Brazilian soldiers, backed by police, dismantled a camp of Bolsonaro supporters in the city who have been there since Lula won the elections.
What we want to emphasize is that for us, what happened here is not an act against the executive power, nor against democracy, nor against the federal constitution. It was a coup attempt, which did not take place.
Following the acts of violence, many countries around the world, including Algeria, have expressed their total rejection of the attacks, recalling the importance of respect for institutions, democracy, freedom and peace.
I just would like to say is that the government repudiates in the strongest possible terms the violence committed yesterday against executive, the legislative and the judicial branches of government in Brasilia. And we are grateful to the messages of support and solidarity we have received from around the world, including from Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
Even Bolsonaro, who was admitted to a hospital in Orlando, Florida due to health issues, condemned the act, saying via his Twitter account that attacks and invasions of public buildings are opposing to the rule governing peaceful demonstrations. For his part, Lula da Silva condemned the invasion and promised to bring those responsible to justice. He also declared a federal security intervention in the capital that will last until January 31st.
They are real vandals, destroying everything in their path. We believe there has been a lack of security, and I want to tell you that everyone who did this will be found and punished. Article 1. Federal intervention in the federal district is declared until 31st January 2023.
The invasion, which recalled the assault on the U.S. Capitol 2 years ago, is seen as the worst attack on state institutions in Brazil ever and raised questions among Lula's allies about how security forces were so unprepared and easily overwhelmed by rioters who had planned for protests days ahead.
President Joe Biden visited the U.S.-Mexico border on Sunday for the first time since taking office, tackling one of the most politically charged issues in the country as he prepares for a re-election bid. His visit was not expected to result in new policies, but rather to demonstrate that he is taking the issue seriously and to strengthen relations with Border Patrol agents, some of whom have bristled at the rollback of hardline enforcement policies by the White House. Biden announced on Thursday that his administration's plan to block Cuban, Haitian, and Nicaraguan migrants at the border, expanding the nationalities of those who can be expelled back to Mexico, in addition to expand trade prospects with Mexico. And for more stories making headlines globally, here is the news in brief.
Qatar Energy and American Chevron Phillips Chemical signed a $6 billion agreement to build a petrochemical plant, which is scheduled to start in 2026.
Once you are called on to ask your question.
40 people were killed and several others injured in a collision between two buses in the Kafrine region, central Senegal, on Sunday. Senegalese President Macky Sall decreed a 3-day national mourning Sunday following the traffic accident. He added that an interministerial council will hold a meeting on the same date to take firm measures on road safety and public passenger transport.
Following today's serious accident in Gnibi, which caused 40 deaths, I've decided on national mourning of 3 days from January 9th.
Thousands of nurses have gone on strike at 2 of New York City major hospitals. The walkout began Monday after contract negotiations stalled over staffing and salaries nearly 3 years into the coronavirus pandemic.
Over 185 Rohingya refugees recently arrived to Pakistan, including women and children. The newly arrived refugees will be moved to the existing refugee camp in Aceh to join the groups already there. 2022 could be one of the deadliest years at sea in almost a decade for Rohingya, who have long been persecuted in Buddhist-majority Myanmar.
Well, that's the end of our program. For more, visit our social media platforms. Thank you for keeping it in our channel. Bye for now.